Hi everyone, I am Mary Elizabeth Bowden and I am the Associate Professor of Trumpet at Shenandoah Conservatory, and I just played through the audition selection for the All of Virginia Trumpet Audition, and this is from Arban's book from his Characteristic Studies, number 9, and it's just a small portion of the etude that you have to work up. So we begin with a rallentando into the largo section before we get to the Pio Allegro. So this is a chance for you to show your beautiful tone and to play very long phrases. So when you do see an articulated 16th note, make sure that you play it long and not short. And be really mindful of Arban's articulations through this passage. So looking at the Allegro, we have a marked tempo of a quarter note equals 124 as our goal tempo. And so in your practice journey, we're not going to start at 124. You have to pick a tempo where you are not starting and stopping. So that very well might be half speed at this point, but you have to start there if you want to build a faster tempo. A common mistake that I see younger players make is taking a tempo that's too fast and then stopping and starting. And so essentially what you're doing with that kind of practice is that you're ingraining mistakes. And so if you repeat the mistake 10 times, but then maybe once you randomly got it right, under pressure in the audition, your body and mind are going to do what you've done the most repetitions of. So it's better to have more repetitions at a slower tempo where you're actually successful. So when I learned this at the slow tempo, and as I gradually sped up the tempo, one of my favorite ways to practice is to put the metronome on, but having the emphasis be on the off beats. So I'm going to show you how to practice that. We're going to start very slowly. I'm going to put the metronome at 72. So this is going to be our offbeat, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. So the click is on the offbeat, and this is how I practiced most of the etude at a very, very slow tempo and gradually sped it up. So the time feels like it's really in the pocket. Oftentimes we only have the metronome on the strong beat, and having it on the off beat is going to change your practice life. Just make sure you start at a tempo that's slow enough that you can process the off beats. The next practice tool that I love to use that you've seen in my other videos is looking at the patterns. We're in 4 and we have a lot of 16th notes. And so I'm going to use the first measure of the Allegro to demonstrate this. So I'm going to put a fermata on the first of every 4 16th notes and then play the E and A's fast. And also keep the articulations where they are marked when you're doing the patterns. So first we hold the first of every 4. And the next pattern is holding the second of every 4. And then the third note. And finally the fourth note. And then after this, I like to do long, short, long, short, long. And then finally, short, long, short, long, short, long. And so with the measures that are tripping me up, I spend a lot of time living in those patterns, and also then going back to the offbeat practice at a slow tempo where I'm going to be successful, and then each day gradually speeding it up. And as I was working this out, I have to say I spent 90% of my practice in a tempo that was quite slower than my goal tempo. And then I really started to gain coordination and was able to move the tempo up pretty quickly once things were settling in, but you have to be very patient and spend a lot of time practicing slowly and successfully. The next thing I'm going to talk about are articulations. So for me, this tempo is kind of in between my single and double tongue. So throughout the etude, I'm using both. So at the Allegro, I am double tonguing. I tend to do a lot of the double tonguing on scalar passages. And then the ones with the intervals, I've added some single tongue in there too, because I have a pretty quick single tongue. So this is up to you. You decide which type of tonguing is going to benefit you the most, and make sure at the slow tempo that if you are going to need to double tongue, that you double tongue at the slow tempo. You can't just add that in later. You have to practice the double tongue slowly. And so I decided ahead of time which passages would need single and which ones would need double, and then I went from there. And the last point that I want to mention is the breathing. You know, Arban did mark in some breaths. I did take an extra one after the low A for the last line, and I think as long as they feel natural, you're gonna lose a tiny bit of time, and I think that's okay. That's better than like hurrying through it and having it sound not musical. So I think listen to the way that I was breathing, and you'll realize that it's okay to take a little milliseconds. You know, this is an unaccompanied etude. And so you want to try to make sure the breaths sound as natural as possible. And of course, if I had more than a day to practice this, I probably would try to make the breaths a little bit faster. We can always improve that as trumpet players. You know, in the famous Excerpt Petrushka, that's another one where you cannot take time on the breaths because you're playing with a snare drum. So anyway, I've been on the panel for many of these types of things, and I can tell you as a judge, the things that I appreciate the most are hearing somebody who has a really great sound. And a great sound to me is someone who plays with good intonation. The sound doesn't have any grit in it. It's a nice, clear, focused tone. And I think someone who's not starting and stopping, I'd rather hear the etude a little bit slower than trying to play it as fast as possible and having a lot of fumbles. And so again, you have to find a tempo that works for you in the performance. If you're not able to make it to the 124 by the audition time, I wouldn't worry about that so much. If it's 120 or 116, play with a lot of confidence, and that will go a long way. And my final tip, because I just did some judging for an all-state competition back in December, and I noticed a lot of young players do this. I would say in this particular all-state audition that I was the panelist on, 80% of the students made direct eye contact with me when playing their scale or when playing their piece. Make sure that you do not make eye contact with the judges while you're playing. It's a little strange, you know, as a performer, we don't want to be making direct eye contact with our audience. And so I would recommend, you know, you face a little bit off to the side from the panel and choose somewhere at eye level or slightly lower to look at, because that'll help you stay more focused. If you're looking at a judge, you're making eye contact, it's a little strange for us, and it's also going to make you feel a little bit, I think it would be like a really big distraction to you, because you don't want to stare at something that's not going to be moving or looking directly back at you. So yeah, these are just some practice tips and performance tips as you take this audition. But remember, with this etude, slow practice, and you will be successful. All right, have a great day.